Welcome to the OG Gambling Syndicate. I'm Joe Giglio, joined as always by Josh Goodson. Josh Goodson, RTP Mortgage. Josh, let's just say it's an interesting week to be an NC State fan.
It is.
You have a case of deja vu over the quarterback situation, going to Clemson. Any of those things ringing a bell to you at this point, or how you feeling? How you feeling?
A lot of them are, man. Like, did this always happen where after a team loses, it's like you either suck and you're not correctable, or like you're great? Was it always like this, or is it just something happened over the last like 3 years, 5 years? So is it a social media thing? Like, I don't think I've ever. I just don't ever remember this thing. The swings. Like
Well,
if we lose, if State wins this weekend, the same people that say Dave can't win the big one and want to fire him, like they're going to be like, oh my God, he can win the big one and he's the best coach I've ever heard. And I'm like, what are we? I don't know. It's just a wild week in NC State land. Kind of getting tired of the
Even needs your vibes, man. He's here for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting tired of the one thing I'll critique Dave on, because I get labeled a Dave defender or coach's defender. They've screwed up the quarterback thing like now 3 times with the portal. They just and we've talked about this. We can understand the why, they went out and got Jack Chambers. We can understand the why you went and got Brendan Armstrong. We can understand the why of Grayson McCall, right? And there's a alternate universe where all those pieces hit and we don't have this conversation, right? I don't think anyone's like going to naysay like what they were attempting to do. But now it's kind of like, this is like what 3 times in the last like 4 years where it's like the transfer guy hasn't worked, and or some combo of you may have had a better guy just sitting on the bench already who could have been the guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know.
I'll say this because you're someone. I mean, I'm not talking out of school here. You contribute to the NC State collective.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, you're not Tom Lavolsi or Andy Albright, right? But there's still an investment there for you.
Yeah.
So when they come to you and they say, "Hey, we're going to take a chance on a quarterback. This is what we're thinking," ahead of time. And as someone who works in the mortgage business too, like you take that and you say, "Okay, there's a risk, right?
We can lock this in now, or we can float and maybe rates get better, right?"
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is someone who has invested you're someone who has invested financially in this program, and that money is used on quarterbacks in the portal.
Yeah.
What you're saying is I understand why they did it. I understand why they did it too with Grayson McCall this time around.
Yeah.
The MJ Morris thing, I mean, we could talk about that till the end of time. You know what I mean?
If you say it out loud, guy beats Clemson, is starting for an ACC school and decides not to play anymore. Just saying that, you're like, someone would look at you like, what are you talking about? He quit.
Right. But I think that goes now, not to absolve Dave. And we're going to get into this game. I promise you, we're going to get into this game. It's 20.5 is the number. The mistake that I think was made with MJ was they really wanted him to see him play a road game, I think, in 22. He gets hurt before the Louisville game. I think if you just have a chance to see him on the road, see him in a different environment, you know what I'm saying? Well, whatever. I think if you see him on the road, see him in a different environment, you have more of a background to work on. Then you don't go into the portal and get Armstrong. Maybe we're sitting here talking about MJ Morris in his 3rd year as the starter at NC State.
Yeah.
So there's an alternate universe there. However, CJ Bailey is the new starter for NC State this week. This number has jumped. NC State at Clemson, noon start. I do think that is important. Noon start down at Clemson. The number is 20.5. I do not remember what the preseason number was for this game, but I think it would be fair to say it was probably either Clemson 7.5 or Clemson 9 in the preseason.
It was. I'm trying to pull it up in real time. I honestly think that when the game of the year lines, because sometimes Vegas will post like game of the years, and NC State was basically include 2 of their games preseason were included on that. One was the Tennessee game, and one was the Clemson game. And I think the
Right.
Tennessee game of the year line preseason was like 4.5 or 5 or something like
Tennessee
that.
was 4.5, a 4.5 point favorite. I actually had Tennessee 4.5.
And I think the Clemson line was a touch higher. A touch
on the
bigger.
road.
It was a road. It was actually a road game versus a neutral game and such. So I think it was, to your point, 7.5. The fact that it's moved 13 points is insane, especially when I don't even think Bailey is a downgrade.
This is wild to me.
What's funny, if you compare NC State and Clemson's seasons, outside of they each have one blowout loss.
To an SEC team.
Where actually in the game, the actual games were the exact same game. Clemson was down 6-0. Like they had played a slow, methodical, down 6-0 at half to Georgia. Wasn't sustainable, got blown out. NC State, we all know what happened. 10-3, driving, 3 minutes to go. That could have been 10-6 at half, a close game. We know what happens, but wasn't sustainable, got blown out. The only difference is State has played Western Carolina and played Louisiana Tech and struggled to beat those teams the way that we perceive that they should have, right? They didn't cover the spread. They weren't close to covering the spread. Clemson has a 35-point first quarter against App State and wins by 1 million. And
a get-right game. Yeah.
I personally don't understand the 13-point, 10 to 13-point swing based on the results. And maybe we'll get into it. I just think State they might be better with Bailey for all we know.
I think 20 points is too much. Now, let's talk about a little bit of the history of this game. NC State has not won at Clemson, hasn't technically won at Clemson since 2002. 2016, they outplayed Clemson. They did all but make a 30-yard kick to beat a war machine Clemson team. Yeah. Okay? Not this fucking version that's going to show up on Saturday.
The Death Star Clemson.
Yeah. So, to be clear, this is not a place that NC State has traditionally played well, right? Yes. And you and I went down in 18, and State was a 17-point dog, and you were like, I'm ready to give up the mortgage business, put everything I own, you own, and everybody's mortgage on Ryan Finley and NC State to cover this number. Trevor Lawrence comes out, zips like a 25-yard out on the first play of the game for Clemson, and I'm like, uh-oh. Nope. Then Kelvin Harmon drops a bomb, and I'm like, uh-oh. Yeah. And that thing ends up being Clemson, again, a team that would go on to win the national championship, winning in a blowout, right?
That Clemson stretch, I pulled it up the other day, that year. they and it should have been maybe in hindsight, we probably should have been they're just that much better, and I was a little wrong with that. That stretch of the season, they have this was their wins. At Wake, 66-3. State, 41-7. At Florida State, 59-10. Home against Louisville, 77-16. Another planet, the 17 points wasn't enough, and it should have been more type thing. Kind of to your point, I don't feel like that's the same game that we're walking into this weekend.
Yeah. Now, the last time NC State was there was in 2022. This was a matchup of top 10 teams. The game was at night. Mm-hmm. That was my first night game at Clemson. Clemson came out and State played really well in the first half of that game, but they were kind of conservative. And Clemson ends up in the second half. DJ Uiagalelei, yes, it's possible. Yes, it really did happen. Yes, he's had good games in college football. That was one of them. He was the difference in that game. Will Shipley, the Wolfblood, also played well in that game. Clemson ends up winning, though, 30-20. I mean, if you tell me right now that NC State's going to go down there, that was a night game. You're telling me right now NC State goes down there and loses 30-20? Yeah, could see that.
Yeah.
Could see it all day.
We could have seen that before even the year started, right? Before, if we were sitting here thinking they have a 2-game season, the Tennessee and Clemson game, it's but you could easily lose both of those games and still have a good season. Right. Be a good team and such. And I'm kind of with you. It sounds defeatist, but no, if it's 30-20 and you lose on the road at Clemson, mind you, Clemson's lost 4 times, I think, at home since Dave has been at State.
Right.
They don't lose at home.
No.
Alabama doesn't lose at home. Georgia doesn't lose at home. Clemson doesn't lose at home.
Yeah, including when they play these teams from the state of North Carolina. Yeah. I've been over this. There are still times where Clemson says, no, fuck you. We're still Clemson.
Yeah.
That was one of those games in 22 when State was down there. They've done it, obviously, the last time they played. They had the week off, which I do think is beneficial to them. 20 just feels like a wrong number.
I feel like me and you follow this enough, like gambling and lines, and we can look at stuff and it usually makes sense. We talked about Alabama, Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, right? Like, usually whenever lines are like that, it's like that for a reason.
By the way, that number was 16. That number was 16.
Right. I personally don't understand. Right. I personally don't understand how this is now a 20.5 point spread, because I don't think State is broken.
Oh, let's get there. I think I do not understand why this is. Because think about it. You and I, we follow NC State, right? Yeah. People who gamble, DraftKings, set lines, all this other stuff, they go on the trend. So obviously all of the money.
They go off of a power rating and a number and all these analytics and stuff. Yeah.
So they go on two things. Obviously all of the money is going on Clemson right now. Otherwise, there's not a 13-point line movement, right? Then you factor in the last time on a national stage NC State was seen was a 51-10 loss in a game that, you're right, they were competitive for 20 minutes in. And then they absolutely quit in the second half of that football game, which was embarrassing for Dave Doran. It was embarrassing for NC State. It was embarrassing for any NC State fan. So I understand, but I also would say to you, and you and I both agree on this, and so would Clemson. You mentioned it when they played Georgia. Well, what happened the next time they played? They came out and breathed fire, right? Like, you're going to have a reaction to the previous performance in that spot. So I would just say to you, the odds of NC State losing again 51-10 are remote. If you have any fucking pride at all.
Sure.
No, yeah. Still do it. To your point, is NC State broken? I would say not yet. I would say their defense played their best half of the season against Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech's not a good football team. Please don't confuse what I'm saying to you. But their defense came out and said, we're not losing today.
State won the second half 24-3. Like, they did exactly what you would hope that they would do, right?
Yeah. And I think, specifically now getting to Bailey versus McCall, and we've talked about this, I thought Grayson McCall was tentative all year. I think he looked like a guy who missed time last year, which he did. He looked like a guy who had seriously considered never playing football again. That's what he looked like to me. Because when you start thinking about injuries and we go into his concussion past, you start thinking about your end in this game, it's already over. If you start thinking about it, it's already over.
And what happens between when he got NC State in January and August? What happens in that time period? You don't get hit.
Don't get hit. So
you're not even worried. There's a difference of, like, actually the physical part of getting hit and the actual worry of getting hit. There was 9 months in practice. Quarterbacks don't get hit. And, like, you don't know how the kid's going to react with his injury history, with his concussion history, until live bullets show. That's not absolving Dave. That's not absolving. It's just the reality of, like, football, right? You don't know which guys are just ready to play under the lights and such.
I think it's also a reality of where NC State is in college football. I know people were celebrating when they got Grayson McCall. Wow, that was a really big pull out of the portal. Well, it turns out a lot of schools didn't want Grayson McCall because of that concussion issues. And there was some diligence there done by some other programs who said, I also will say this about the portal. How many hits really are there? Riley Leonard's number at Notre Dame is supposed to be $3 million.
Yeah.
$3 million? You think Notre Dame's getting their money's worth out of Riley Leonard?
Florida State,
put a pass down the field, like
Florida State and DJU. I mean, there's many instances across the country of, like, sometimes it just doesn't work. It's just
no, it's not. Sometimes it's
a lot more than sometimes.
Across the board. It's across the board. So again, I'm not absolving them for the MJ situation. I'm not absolving them. I am absolving them though for these people who are like, well, weren't you watching practice? Wasn't CJ Bailey like that much better than Grayson McCall? And it's like, probably not. CJ McCall is going to be 24 years old. And he's been in college. He's been in practices. To your point, he's not getting hit in those practices. So my guess is Grayson McCall, who was also voted captain by his teammates, by the way, looked pretty good in practice. So I don't blame them. Now that they are on to CJ, I think he's going to make a mistake early in this game. And the question is, can he handle it? And I loved the poise that he played with, at the risk of being like Johnny State fan who gets excited by every new quarterback, right? We do this all the time. Philip Rivers broke our brains, right? Like there's no way around this. I love the poise that he played with. If you don't know about his high school, Chaminade down in Miami, he played with the receiver at Ohio State. He played with the backup running back at Carolina who ran for 100 yards in the game that he got to play against Charlotte. He played basically on a Division I football team last year and was the quarterback. And because it was NC State and Miami got in late, he didn't get the recruiting bump that you normally get for being that type of player. The truth of the matter is, everybody in the country saw this guy. Yeah. Smith didn't get the ball by himself. He didn't throw the ball to himself.
Right. You can make the claim of like, well, I would look good throwing it to those guys too.
Right.
Also, if he wasn't good enough, he wouldn't be the quarterback of that high school team. Either.
Correct. That's where I'm getting at. This isn't your local.
He can play.
This isn't Garner High and no politics involved. That prep school is saying you either deliver or you don't play, or the parents are going to go out and buy somebody else to go get their kid the ball. So I love the poise that he played with. They were trailing, obviously, in the game. Did he light the world on fire? No, but I thought he has a better arm than Grayson. He's a more physically talented player than Grayson is. That leads to him taking more chances. That's where the mistake is going to come from against Clemson. So please don't mistake what I'm saying here. I just think you combine NC State losing 51-10 and being embarrassed. You combine, they actually do probably have the better quarterback now, physically, the more physically talented one. Obviously not the more experienced one, but the more physically talented one. I think you take a little bit of the ornery stuff. Dave's always better when he's ornery. Salty Dave is always the better Dave. If they lose this football game 28-14, or Dave loves to kick field goals, 28-13, 24-13, that would not surprise me in the least bit. Okay.
I've got to play for you. I've got to play for you then.
I'm taking the points in this game. I know. Shame on me. Fool me again, but I'm taking the points.
I like the points, and I took State on the money line. I did. I just think the value. If we're looking at it, if me and you feel like we know NC State a lot better than Vegas and than the odds makers do, it's purely a value play. I don't think they've gone from being 7-point dogs to 20-point dogs, I guess is what I'm getting at. So if you can get them, I think I just saw FanDuel, you can get plus 980. That's a pretty ridiculous return.
So bet $100, win $980.
$980. And you just gave me a couple predictions, like if they lose 28-14 or Dave loves to kick field goals. Over 12.5 team total for NC State is basically even money. I think they're going to score, man. The offense, a lot of people like to feel like it's the same offense, the same conservative offense, the same not willing to take shots and be aggressive offense. They've actually had more plays drawn up and ready to go with verticality involved than they did last year because they actually have really good wide receivers this year. The fact of the matter is, Grayson McCall has just missed the guys or overthrown the guys. So it's not without lack of trying. And I think I like a little bit more on Bailey. Last week, he didn't like the run on fire, but he made the plays that were there.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a Wesley Grimes who ran a dig 16 yards down. He's able to throw the ball to him with zip, and that's a 16-yard completion. So on. So I actually think State's going to score. I mean, not when I say score, if they score 30, then they're winning the game, right? But
right.
I think they got 2 touchdowns in them. The offense is not as broken as many I think that it is, and I just think maybe you have the guy in there that is a lot more comfortable. And I think we can agree that yes, the experience is probably going to bite them at some point next week or this week and such. Just that experience factor playing on the road, but.
How does he handle making mistakes? How does he handle making mistakes, Bailey? Again, the poise that he showed, his own background, his pedigree suggests that he's going to be able to handle those mistakes. To me, this game, listen, we went into the year thinking, oh, it's the Tennessee and Clemson games. Now I think it's the other 8 games that come after this. And you and I disagree how they'll handle the next 8 games. I would love to be wrong. I would. I was wrong last year. And I was pleased that I was wrong.
Yeah.
I thought their defense, obviously, with Peyton Wilson was better last year, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, Dave's back to a wall now, back to Celtic Dave. Nobody saying anything nice about him. They obviously prefer that position, so we'll see. Clemson, again, coming off of conversely, with Clemson, just to add a little more Clemson context, I mean, they played a home run, lollipops, dreams, and blueberries game against App State. Like, the chances of them repeating that are very, very slim. Very, very slim. So I coming off an open date, but I don't think I think they probably wanted to play football last week after all of the good things that happened against App State. And it's so early in the season. My guess is that they got Michael Strickland over at the ACC got a stern letter from Clemson saying, why the fuck did you give us an open date this early in the season when we didn't want one? But it is a 2 open date season on the college football schedule. So
in that first quarter, they had, and this isn't meant to downplay it. The plays happen, but if you get in watching enough football, you try to focus on what's sustainable, like what's not sustainable. 76-yard first pass of the game, touchdown, another 50-yard bomb. If that happens this weekend, State's losing 51-10, right? Sure. But I think, it's not like the score, the 66-20 happened. The way it got there, there's a little bit of fluff in how they got there as well. So we'll see.
All right. So we're both on the same side here, taking the points. State. All right. Let's talk about Carolina and JMU. This was a game going into the season I had circled and said this could be one of those where Carolina, little sleepy Carolina, maybe not paying attention to a JMU team, a program that made the transition from the lower level and has promptly gone 19-5 in their first 2 seasons in the Sun Belt. That's not a joke. 13-3 their first 2 years as a member of the Sun Belt, which in my opinion is the best group of 5, top to bottom group of 5 conference. They're off. JMU's getting 10.5 points in this game. Carolina obviously kind of going through it. And Ken was on the chat here before. I think he might still be here, but Ken was the one who texted me from the Carolina NC Central game. Like, this is bad. This is real bad. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I watched Carolina and NC Central because I did not.
Yeah.
I did watch Carolina against Minnesota, and I did watch Carolina against Charlotte. And I know they've gone now to Jacoby Criswell, which I kind of thought when they bought him back, like, why else would you bring him back? This guy from Arkansas. Like, if you really loved Max Johnson and Connor Harrell, they're probably all 3 of them are pretty similar, right? Max obviously a little bit more accomplished with his background in Texas A&M and the SEC, but for the most part, Carolina is a team that is trying to rely on their improved defense and trying to run the football with Amarian Hampton, who's just been, lights out, outstanding. Yeah. So this comes down to, can JMU stop Hampton? Can they stop the run? Can Carolina clean up the defensive penalties that they had last week? Right?
Yeah.
So I look at this at the beginning of the year. I looked at this and I said, thank you, Lake. Yeah, it was dire. Like, I didn't watch the game. Ken was there. Ken is a huge Carolina fan, was there, kind of like you are, a State fan. Like, he was there, he's into it, and he's like, don't be fooled by that score. Like, this was bad. So I look at it and I go, 10.5 probably seems wrong, but JMU doesn't have Kurt Signetti anymore, the old NC State assistant under Chuck Amato. He's now at Indiana. They've started the season 2-0. You got to figure this is JMU's Super Bowl. They don't play Virginia Tech. They don't play Virginia. This is their chance to play a ACC team. This is their only Power 5 team that they have on their Power 4 team they have on their schedule. If anything, I'd say maybe take JMU in the first half of this game, but I don't like the full game number here. I do think Carolina wins.
I like the Tar Heels.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm going to bring my NC Stateness into it. I think we're going to see this same scenario next week when Northern Illinois comes to Raleigh.
Okay.
Everyone, if you follow college football and the players follow college football and kind of read stuff, they're going to be told, like, oh, watch out.
This is a good team.
This is your upset special.
Yeah.
People think you're going to lose. You're going to lose at home. I'm not going to say like this is a pride game, right? But I just think Carolina still has more better players. A lot of JMU's team is not what JMU's team was. Their coach is not who their coach was. I think that there's a reason why they struggled with Gardner Webb.
Yeah, those were the two results we have from JMU. A win over Charlotte, who's just god awful, and then a 13-6 win at home against Gardner Webb.
And usually, and I would forgive me, I haven't looked at the total roster of JMU and Carolina, but this just feels like an Amarion Hampton special. I think Carolina does have better players. Obviously, that's a duh statement, but I don't think JMU's what they were. I think they're going to have. I think Carolina is going to have JMU is going to have Carolina's attention. I just think Carolina's better. Does that mean they're going to blow them out? No, but like, can they win by 2 touchdowns? I think they do in this spot, especially after last week.
Now wait a second. We're not supposed to trust the heels and Mac Brown as a double-digit favorite. We're not supposed to.
Conference game, right?
Let's get into one of our other
conference game thing, right? And they're not not ranked.
Yeah.
They don't have a number beside their name. I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people have they probably heard all offseason like, oh,
this is one you can lose.
You're going to lose at home, and we're going to see the same thing in Raleigh next week when Northern Illinois comes to Raleigh, and I'm going to be on this whatever the state. Go ahead and give me state. I just the spot I think is going to be good enough that they're going to prevail and they're going to have their attention.
I do think Carolina's defense is better, as Ken pointed out. They had 16 penalties last week. I think you clean up those penalties. This feels like, again, I would, if you have to do it, if you're like a super duper state fan and cannot bet on Carolina, I would take JMU in the first half of this game potentially. But I think Carolina covers this number. I'm with you. I think this feels like
in non-con games.
Feels like a 31-17 Carolina win to me.
In non-con games in general, they're pretty damn good under Mac.
Yeah.
Like
in September as well. Yeah.
And it's not even like non-con, like I'm not even really counting the bowl games. I'm just talking like non-con games in general. They usually win these games, like, and so I think there's something to that. Like I like Carolina to cover the number.
Now, I mentioned that Carolina struggles as a double-digit favorite. Now let's get to the easy auto ACC play of the week. Georgia Tech is sound the alarm. Georgia Tech is playing a ranked ACC opponent. Georgia Tech under Brent Key, 5-7 against unranked ACC teams. Straight up, 5-0 against ranked ACC teams. As a guy who hates the Dave Doran versus top 25 stat, how the fuck is Brent Key 5-0 against ranked ACC opponents?
Yeah.
Like, does this make any sense to anyone?
No, it doesn't. Maybe
Speaking of your Pitt superpower, they beat one of your Pitt superpowers as one of those ranks, right?
Maybe I'll play the hindsight games of like, well, let's to be fair, it should be 1-4 or 4-1. The Miami game last year, right?
Yeah.
Should be 4-1, but whatever. They perform well against ranked teams, yes, and it's kind of and it doesn't make sense.
And 3 of them are on the road. One was in Ireland. I don't know. I already have this one in. This is an auto play for me. I'm sure it'll blow up on me because I've put it on social media this whole time. But I've got GT as this auto play. It's 10 points on the road at Louisville. I didn't even mention the opponent at Louisville.
I got the over
in this one.
57.5.
Okay.
Louisville's going to score some points. I can't get there with you. I know what you're saying. I know what the trend says. I get all of that. I just think Brahms are better. Here's what something you should do. Go look at the coaches of all the teams that they beat, those ranked teams that they've beat.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Brom is like a way better coach, especially in-game coach than any of those guys.
Narduzzi, Mac Brown twice. You mentioned Mario Cristobal, and then Norvell this year, whose team is obviously already quit on him, although not in that game quite yet.
Like Brom. I like Brom. I think he's a good coach. I mean, like we just talked about it. I think they're going to have their attention. He is a good enough coach that I trust him that Louisville is going to understand the stats that you just gave, right, and be able to like have that translate to the field. So I wouldn't. 10.5 is a weird number because Georgia Tech does fight. If anything. The Carolina game, I believe the Carolina games twice, they were also like down big in those games. They just don't quit in these ranked games. There's something about winning them. They were down like 2 touchdowns against Carolina. And just so I don't think they're going to quit. I kind of like the number. Like if you're doing the number, I would lean Georgia Tech. but I do like the over a little bit better. Louisville's going to score some points. And I think Georgia Tech will too.
All right, we're making our plays. I've got 2 other national plays for us before we get to those. Hey, you need a loan? You need a mortgage?
Yes.
Check out my guy, Josh Goodson, RTP Mortgage, rtpmortgage.com. Give him a call, 252-361-1415. What Ken was saying something was going on. What's going on in your world? You got some big movements today?
The Fed cut rates yesterday. 50 basis points or 0.5%. Mortgage rates got higher yesterday. You're like, what? What is that? No, like I say we, the mortgage rate world had already kind of built in, kind of knowing this was going to happen. We've already been moving down. Perspective, I closed somebody on a purchase on a loan back in November at 7.875. That was probably at the height. The same guy is now currently in the refinance process. He is locked in at 5.99.
Nice. And the price of the house didn't go down. So
no, price of the house went up. So he made the right decision of buying. But like, that's a long-winded way of saying rates have already started to come down. Yesterday didn't really mean much for us. But what yesterday does mean, and it kind of shows we don't follow what the Fed does verbatim, but and they're also projecting more cuts. Mortgage rates are going to continue to kind of keep falling down. Like, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to go up a little bit and down, but it'll be a drop down for the most part. So if you need, what yesterday did do, I will say, there's a lot of people that don't like follow anything but the news, and they're going to hear Fed rate cut. I can go buy a house now. Buyer demand is probably going to tick up a little bit. So I do think it's, worth your while if you want to buy or refi to go ahead and, look into that, because I think competition may not be fun to deal with if there's 10 buyers trying to buy the same house at the same time, bidding wars, all that good stuff. So rates are already coming down. Reach out if you have questions.
All right. Before we get to our, I got 3 national plays that I do feel good about. Well, 2 I feel good about. One that it's just like certainly a position play, if you will. But before we get to that, we have our monthly contest in September. Are you ready for me to show you?
Are you kind of led the witness? Are you winning it?
No, I mean, first of all, I can't win, so let's just be clear about that. But here are our monthly standings for September thus far. Pirates 11-9, Giglio Joe 11-9, and Trip 4 11-9.
Wasn't like the guy in the lead last week like 8-2?
And he went 2-8 this week. Chill right there. Hey, but listen, we got 2 more weeks. We're going by wins.
That just kind of shows you. That it literally shows you. I want to know what the guy who was 0. What was the guy last week who was 1-9? Like, what did he do?
He didn't come back, but I would encourage him to, because look, we're going to go by wins, right? Yeah. So there's still 2 weeks left in September.
You can go 10-0 this week and basically be in 3rd place.
There you go. You can get hot and still win the tickets to go see the Carolina Hurricanes, thanks to Josh Goodson, and RTP Mortgage. Yeah, I'm very proud of myself for being sadly 11-9. So here's the code for this week. Again, you can go to Draftkings, and then go to a pool, join a private pool. That's the code, R4PNQHT. Again, go to DraftKings. It's under pools. Okay, on your app, go to pools, join a private pool. That's your code right there. Join us. And again, whoever has the best record at the end of September is going to win 2 tickets to a Carolina Hurricanes home game.
Most wins are best. It has nothing to do with winning percentage, right? Just most wins.
Most wins. That way you can still rally here if you haven't entered in the first 2 weeks.
You said there's 2 weeks left. That's what there's 20 wins available.
Yeah. So make the most of it. There's your code. Join the code. Join us. And of course, with DraftKings, look, if you haven't signed up yet, not sure what you're waiting for, but your first $5 bet will get you $250 in bonus bets. That's a lot. All right. And then one thing I learned last week too, they have all kinds of stuff on the NFL, up early, money line. So you could take the Patriots like I did. They were plus 160. They scored a touchdown on their first drive. Boom, you cash. There was a no sweat bet that you did not need on the Panthers last week, but it was there. There was a no sweat bet that I had from a Puka Nakua, Amon-Ra St. Brown parlay. But I lost. Well, guess what? No sweat means you get your money back. So all kinds of ways. Do yourself a favor. Head over to the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Get yourself signed up. Use that promo code OG24. Bet $5. You're $250 in bonus bets. And of course, since we are a national publication, whatever we are, broadcast, roll the beautiful bean footage.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball.
All right, you got all that. Good.
Isn't blindly betting whoever's playing the Panthers just like a no sweat bet, like in general?
Well, last week it was. We'll see what they do with the Red Rifle this week.
The number's only 5.
It's going down now that they benched Bryce Young. It's the opposite of state. The money's actually going down.
Like, still, I don't.
There's a number. There is a stat, and it applied last week as well. I will say that there is a stat that basically says
if you lose by $1 million, you win your next game or something like that.
No. Essentially, take all of the winless 0-2 NFL teams. They've won like 62% of their games against the spread in week 3.
Oh wow!
Essentially, and if obviously if you're new to gambling, 62%, you might think, oh, that's not that great. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right. My hammer play the last 2 weeks has been just crushing it. I'm very proud of myself.
Good.
If I had discipline, there would just be a hammer play and nothing else, right?
What fun is that though, Joe?
Discipline's for principals in second grade. That shit ain't for me. Okay.
No.
So I had Texas at Michigan. I told you what was going to happen there.
Yeah.
I had Alabama at Wisconsin. I told you what was going to happen there. We both, in fairness to us and to you, we both had Ole Miss last week at Wake Forest. We told you.
I wish we knew about the buyout thing before the game. It would have been a double hammer.
Even before we knew Wake was going to be a super kitty and decide to go away and not play next year, we said, this is a load them up, get it ready.
Yeah.
My most confident play this week.
We had ECU app under too.
Yeah, that was great. I actually combined all of those bets and won a really nice parlay last week. Yeah. So here's my one play, Discipline Joe hammer of the week. You ready?
Yeah.
I like South Florida at home against Miami. South Florida is getting 16.5 points. Everything has been rainbows, lollipops, and blowjobs for Miami thus far this season. Everything has been coming up Miami. All right. So they're due a struggle. I'll say that. Now you're also on the road. I get it. Not that far away, but you're not at home. You're on the road. And you're playing an in-state team. This is the equivalent of Carolina or NC State going to ECU or App State.
Right.
This is that equivalent. Not only that, South Florida is a good football team. They are. And Byron Brown is the guy I think should be NC State's quarterback, but he's not.
Pack Pro Byron Brown.
Well, he will be. So they've already played at Alabama. Yes, the final score of that game was a little wonky, but for 2 years in a row, they've played Alabama essentially to a standstill. They will not be scared of Miami. Miami, like I said, is due to have some sort of hiccup on this dream fucking menage of a season that they're having. So give me all of those points. South Florida at home, hammer time. Sell it to you.
I got one for you.
Okay.
I think I may have found my new favorite like there's a few like FU coaches out there. There's a few coaches that kind of know this. I think they know the spread. Like James Franklin is like notorious for at Penn State is known for knowing the spread. We got a new one now. Josh Heupel at Tennessee.
Oh.
They by the way, I hit last week. Kent State got 88.5, 88.5, 88.5. They were playing Tennessee. The live line went to 88.5. And when Vegas is going to give you plus 88.5 for anybody, it's a principal play. You have to take it. Tennessee ended up winning like 75-0 or whatever. They were up 30-0 in the first quarter and kicked an onside kick. That guy doesn't care. And they are playing this weekend, guess where?
His alma mater.
Oklahoma. Do you remember what happened in 2015?
No.
He got fired by Bob Stoops while coaching as an assistant coach at Oklahoma.
Okay.
Then he went on to UCF after his contract wasn't renewed, I guess is the best way to say it. He got fired, right? He was not brought back. This guy has a vengeful thing. When they can score points, they score points. He seems like the kind of guy that makes sure his boosters who bet on Tennessee, make sure they get that number if they need to get that number. I think this weekend at Oklahoma, they're laying 7-point favorite. I think this is a loaded up on Tennessee every way you can type of game. I don't think Oklahoma's that good. And we have a history of 2 years ago, Tennessee was – last year they weren't as good as they were 2 years ago. But 2 years ago they were really good. They actually had the crazy game where they beat Alabama and at Tennessee. That was kind of their breakthrough win. They finally got over on Alabama. They had a few games kind of like this. That year they beat the crap out of Clemson, that was kind of when Clemson was sort of starting to go down a little bit. They weren't like Death Star Clemson. They beat the crap out of Kentucky, who was ranked number 19 that year. They beat them by 40. They beat the crap out of an LSU team on the road that year by 30 points. Whenever they win and they cover. I just think he's the guy that he's going to want to make sure that they remember, that Oklahoma might remember, hey, I know I was your guy. I know I played here. I have good feelings here.
He was their quarterback in 2000.
But I think it's a loaded up on Tennessee everywhere you can.
Interesting. I kind of like you.
And again, I just think Tennessee's that good too. Like, regardless of all that, like all of the the lead up of that, I think Tennessee is that team. When they played State a couple weeks ago, Nico actually wasn't great. Like he didn't need to be. Like they ran the ball all over State, but I was actually more encouraged by their defense. I thought their defense was actually really good as well. I think Tennessee's just that good, personally.
Interesting. I would actually go the other way here just because I'm leery.
And I think Oklahoma's they're about to have that, we're in the SEC life. We're not one of the top two people in our league. Like we might be 6th or 7th. I don't think Oklahoma's quite there yet either.
Okay. This game's at night in Norman. Yeah. As a principal, you take plus 88. I'm not betting against Oklahoma at night. I'm not.
Especially getting points too. Right?
This is a Greenville, America type setting where you're like, at night, Death Valley. Interesting. I'm with you. I do think Tennessee is very good. I also wonder, remember when Boston College joined the ACC in Miami and Virginia Tech, and it was like, this is your first ACC game. Don't you want to show everybody? Like, I'm not into that for Oklahoma, but this is their first SEC game. This is purely, let's put it this way. I'm not on the opposite side of you. I would just say, I don't love that this is a night game. That's all I will say.
Fair.
I don't love that this is a night game. Kind of related is my other play this week.
Okay.
I did tell you that Michigan was fraudulent against Texas, who I believe to be the most talented offensive team in the country.
I saw this game. Very interesting number.
They still have a very good defense.
Yeah.
They still are at home in this football game.
Yeah.
Michigan hosting USC. Speaking of, hey, this is your first Big Ten game. Like, I don't think USC is looking at it like that. Michigan plus 5.5 at home. against a team that people are excited because they beat LSU. Like, awesome. You beat Brian Kelly. Cool. Yeah. I think Michigan has one of those. Hey, wait a second. Wait. We can win one of these. I mean, they ain't going to trade paint with Texas, as we saw. I think they actually beat USC in this football game. Give me Michigan on the money line.
Not at night. I think it's actually like a
3:30, which they actually prefer.
Yeah. They
love those mid-afternoon games at the big house. I just don't believe in USC quite yet. So
I feel like if I played anything in that one, I like under, because I think USC's defense has actually been pretty good, and Michigan's offense is a train wreck. I think they're changing quarterbacks. I think
they are switching to the running quarterback though. So I think Michigan has a little bit of a pride game. This is one of those Pulp Fiction Butch with the watch pride games to me. I like Michigan at home. You got any other plays for this week, or are we done?
I got one more.
Okay.
I think East Carolina's actually still pretty good.
Their defense is very good. Man, this is a can you reload the musket game, though, game. Because they poured it out for App State. What's the number? I didn't even look.
It's 6.
Oof, that's tricky.
I think ECU's pretty good. You kind of said it, too. Like, Mike Houston's got to win something like this that people can care about. Like, they're not going to care if they come home next week and meet you at UTSA.
Right.
UTSA could be 5-0. Like, they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
ECU fans will travel for this one. I think they've actually kind of circled this one. As crazy as it sounds, I think if you're a G5 team, this is something we have to think about. You're not out of the playoff thing until you're out of it.
I know this is one of those games that matters.
And like you were going to have at least last week or this week. And I think the reload thing is tough. To your point, because they had that game on lock last week, 17-0 or 16-0, and just couldn't get it home, get it into the barn. But I like them to cover this week, 6 points. I'm surprised you didn't go down to Myrtle Beach to take that game.
I didn't even realize it until I was going through this morning, and then I was like, "Oh no!"
I think this spot, because I actually think Coastal's pretty good.
So it's Tim Beck, head coach at Coastal. Des Kitchings is the OC.
And if you're a G5 school, your goal is to get the playoff. No one's going to care that Virginia sucks. They're just going to see that you beat a P5 team,
right?
And they're getting point. Virginia's favored in that game. Virginia, I don't think is very good still. So
I think they're the same team they were last year. They're spunky.
Not very good.
But
they got kind of ran at home last week against Maryland. I did see that.
They did. But as our recent memory shows, Maryland has good skill players. Their problem is they don't have the line.
That's just like the Virginia crowd going to Myrtle Beach is just kind of a fun culture thing to even think.
You're not even thinking of it in terms of Dave Doran's former offensive coordinators and the amount of screenplays and draws we're going to see in that game.
So the under, you would like the under. I think it's like 58 or something like that.
I'm not taking the under. No. Get the heck out of here.
Some fun games.
All right. Again, appreciate everyone for playing, joining us here. Check out our weekly, it's a monthly contest. That's the code on your DraftKings Sportsbook. The link is actually below in the summary there. So join us. Those tickets, it's going to come down to it. I just want to win. I'm not going to win the tickets, but I just want to win to say that I won, because there's things that there's few things in this life I enjoy more than being right. So promo code on that DraftKings private pool. That's what you enter to join our pool for September. Appreciate you all for being here, and we'll do this again next Thursday.